And what I believe is that people don't really have relationships with product. They have relationships with the brand.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into Nodes of Design. To help support our mission spread knowledge, we have a very special guest on today's episode. Let's welcome Matt Clack, who is a creative head at Google Brand Studios APAC, where he leads a team of amazing creative directors, art directors, designers, and technologists to make Google Brand accessible to all with the help of creativity, storytelling, and technology. And Matt's work has been acclaimed with so many global awards. To list few, we have awards AdStars, D&AD, Shorties, New York Festival Advertising Award, One Show Bronze, and Celio Awards, and many more. On this episode, Matt has shared wonderful insights on brand strategy. We discussed on how product brand strategy works in the big firms, and he also shared with us a process on how to find out a niche for a certain brand and what are the various ways in which once the brand is built, how do you maintain that consistency across all different platforms. In the end, we spoke about how storytelling plays a very major role in creating some great brand strategies. Hope you guys enjoy this episode, and on every Friday, we release new episode with different creative leaders around the world to make you help better understand different topics of design. So don't forget to tune in into Notes of Design every Friday. With that being said, happy designing everyone. Hi Matt, welcome to Nodes of Design. It's a pleasure hosting you today on our show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's nice to finally meet you.
Same here, Matt. So how's your day going?
Today's been pretty busy. We have a lot going on at Google in terms of helping people solve their small business problems coming out of COVID. A lot of small businesses are suffering. So we've been learning quite a bit about how we can help them solve their problems. We just ran a newspaper ad today that we designed, which I haven't done in a long time. I know that the viewers or the listeners can't see it, but it's pretty neat to have a newspaper ad in Japan out in the wild.
That's really great, Matt. So Matt, if you could give a brief about yourself to our audience out there.
Sure. I head up creative for the Google Brand Studio APAC, and I lead this amazing team of creative directors, art directors, designers, technologists, motion designers, data experts, film directors, overall smarties that help make Google's brand make more sense to the people out there with the help of creativity, a little bit of storytelling, and a whole lot of technology.
Thank you so much, Matt, for giving us a brief. So Matt, what was your journey into design? How did you start, and what are the tips to the beginners that you want to suggest?
Yeah, it's funny because I guess I actually came into design through advertising. Always was really good at art, but I thought, I thought I couldn't turn that into a meaningful career. But when I discovered the creative program at my university, I started, basically creating ideas first and then designing later. And that's how I kind of built up my chops as a designer. Really, I think that that's the most important thing is idea first, then design later, right? Design has to match your idea and your concept. And the biggest advice I can give a designer right now is just start, do it, and then it's like a muscle. You have to build it up over time. Design does come from talent, right? But it also is a muscle that you can actually engage and learn. And, what we've learned from programs like, the how-tos on YouTube and stuff like that, people can basically do whatever they want. They can learn whatever they want. So really, it's about just beginning. Please, if you want to be a designer, you have to be a designer, right? You have to actually start practicing. I think also it's really important to have an end goal in mind, like, oh, I want to be a web designer. I want to be an advertiser. I want to be a graphic designer for logos. Having kind of that end goal of like where you want to head with your design is really important because it'll help you hone a specific skill. And when you're building a portfolio, you really want to make sure that your intelligence and your talent comes through in a singular superpower. If you spread yourself too thin across lots of different types of design, you won't get good at one thing. And that's not to say that you can't come back to that thing later. It's just really important to kind of know where you want to head and pick a track. So yeah, I would say like learn new skills along the way, but really get good at one thing, especially if you want to turn it into a career. The other thing is play really nice, like learn from others and ask for help. I think there's lots of inspiration out there on the web, and it's not about copying. It's not about doing what's popular or in style at the moment. It's about doing what Paul Rand did, which is look for something that's a little bit more timeless. And it doesn't mean you can't pick up on those things in your style, but it's important to keep it yours. And so, yeah, look for inspiration, use inspiration, but don't copy, because I guarantee that, seasoned designers will be like, oh, I've seen that design before. I know who's designed that before. So look at Pentagram's site, but don't copy Pentagram's site. And then, I would suggest that you begin your career at an agency, not necessarily a big firm company like Google. I would say it's a good place to like end your career once you have some experience. But when you work at agencies, you get lots of experience across huge number of clients. And I've heard this on your podcast before, where you guys discussed branding, and it's really important for you to build a portfolio across a number of different clients so that people can see what you can accomplish. If you end up working at a company, I'm proud of you, but you're going to end up doing one thing over and over again, and it's hard to differentiate like those projects from each other. So yeah, I would definitely say start an agency. It's definitely where I grew the most. And then the last thing is, of course, work with somebody, a boss that can teach you something you're missing. You're going to be developing your skills, but you don't know what's best, especially when you're first starting out. So finding people that inspire you and can mentor you and get you to that next level is really, I think I have that right now for like one of the first times in my career. And it's incredible to have somebody who's kind of an image of you in the future. So look for that person that can kind of give you that. And I think, for your listeners, you really are doing that. You're being an inspiration for them in that way. You're being a mentor, even if they don't get to really engage with you face to face. It's still a very important tool for young designers to use to their advantage.
Thank you so much, Matt, for taking us through your journey and giving us these great inspirational tips. So let's begin today's episode with brand strategy. So what exactly is brand strategy and its importance?
Yeah, I think when we talk about brand strategy and its importance in the world, really, if you think about brand and what brands mean, it's not just a logo. Right? It's so much more than that, and I believe that it's the story that a product wants to share with the world. Working for a company like Google, we have lots and lots of different products, but it's all under one large brand. So the brand has to be more meaningful than the sum of the individual products themselves. To me, when we talk about brand, it's really that purpose that lives beyond the product. And really, if you look at brand strategy and brand design, really it's about differentiating yourself from competitors. So looking at what makes you different as a company and then using that as the tool to communicate what makes you special. And you can see that and you can actually see it with personal brands too. You see it with musicians and artists as well. They have a specific style. They have a specific thing that they show off. Really, that's a strategy to differentiate themselves from other people, right? And stand out in the crowd. And what I believe is that people don't really have relationships with product. They have relationships with the brand. They don't love, we all love our iPhones, right? But we love the iPhones because of what Apple has done to design the iPhone and made it different, right? It's high design. And that's a really important thing to note, that brand is super, super important in today's world.
Thank you so much, Matt, for giving us this great insight. So in big brands like Google and all, there's this word product brand strategy that has been widely used. So can you help us break it down?
Yeah, you're right. It's a really, really broad term, isn't it? Brand strategy. But I think brand strategy is what your design or what your brand says. And brand design is how it says it, right? So when you're thinking about brand strategy, it's really what's behind the things that your brand wants to say. And I've been listening to your other podcast about branding. And, a logo is a good representation of, how you show what your brand says to the world. And it's important that those things link together. So like if you look at a company like Lego, for example, they have a product that's just like a million tiny different pieces like scattered around, right? But they use that to their advantage. And they talk about this open-ended creativity. And their brand strategy is all around what can you build with Lego? And you see how that plays out in all of their marketing and their branding initiatives, from simple toys to very complex toys to the way that they engage creators to create new things. Really what Lego is doing is showing off what makes them different as a company. And it happens to be their bricks. So I can see that really it's about having that mindset, everything that you create. Now, brand strategy is bigger than brand design because it should stem into everything you do as a company, not just design, but design is really how you say it. So you can see, I worked on a Volvo campaign a while back, the car company, and in the past, I remember we were going through all of this research about Volvo, and in the past, they looked like little boxes with wheels. Ridiculous. And people thought they weren't sexy and they weren't stylish. But what Volvo did is they looked at their product, and their agency looked at their product, and they said, actually, that's what makes us special. We are extremely reliable. And the sexiness of our car doesn't matter. It's all about how far you can drive it and how much you can drive it. And so they came up with a campaign that was around this idea of drive it like you hate it. And when I was working on their campaign, we were working with that idea of drive it like you hate it. Can you imagine saying such a thing in the advertising world? That is differentiating your brand with brand strategy and making it stand out from all your competitors who at that time were all about bigger engines, brighter colors, sex appeal. So really what I think is like, no matter where you are in the world, who you are in the world, or if you work in advertising or not, you can establish a brand that makes you, right? You find that differentiation that makes you, you.
Thank you so much, Matt, for explaining us in detail. So what is a process you follow when there's a challenge to define a brand for an enterprise that is actually trying to find its space or a niche?
I think the first thing you need to do as a creative mind is immerse yourself in the product, right? You need to understand the positives and you need to understand the negatives of the product. Those strengths and weaknesses help you define why it's different. Like I said, it's that difference that really matters. So what we try to look for, at least when I'm coming up with branding, is where's the cross-section of those two things? What makes that product special and what will make it resonate or communicate in a new way to the consumer? And I guess the best example I have of that right now is we've been working on this reading app for Google that uses voice recognition and AI to help kids learn to read. Okay. And if you immerse yourself in that product a little bit, you discover that voice recognition AI is really what differentiates it from other products out there. There's a lot of reading tutorial products, but none of them really use voice recognition and AI quite like this. And that's something that's really unique to Google, right? We have that technology that we can build into our products. And what we did is we came up with a name and a brand that kind of embodies that. And for Indian audiences, we called it Bolo, which means talk or say in Hindi. And it's all about that special thing that differentiates Bolo from the rest of its competitors. Now, because it's meant for good, it's really meant for kids to use. The brand strategy, of course, for the product had to be about how we speak to kids and how the product works for kids, especially how they speak to it. But for marketing, we don't market to children. That's not good. So we market to parents and to teachers. And so we had to change the way we talk about the brand for them. So we ended up with this like really beautiful, meaningful line that could be for anyone. It could be for teachers, it could be for parents, but it was kind of also for children. And it says, learn to read with the magic of voice. Really, that was our idea that if Bolo is about speaking, if Bolo is about reading along, which is what we call the product now, we call it read along because Bolo doesn't mean Bolo in other languages around the world. And now that we're in 180 countries, we needed to change the name. So it's now called read along, but that still has that spirit of voice recognition and AI in it. We came up with that line, learn to read with the magic of voice. Really, we rest the product there. It's kind of magical that you can use your own words to discover something new. And when you read a word for the very first time, that magic gets unlocked and you discover that there are opportunities out there that you didn't know. And if, literacy is the key definer of a child's ability to succeed, then reading with your voice is such a personal experience. But we made that very clear for parents in all of the marketing so they could see exactly how successful their child could be with their voice. So really, that was like an exercise in finding what makes read along different from other apps and using that to our advantage to offer, that really beautiful opportunity that the product can provide.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was a great product explanation. Thanks for that. So once you build a brand, one needs to be consistent with it, right? So are there any best practices for enabling a better consistency over an organization?
Yes, it's really key that designers step in to create standards and communicate those standards to everybody that's using your brand. So you've designed a new brand logo, for example. It's really important for you to establish what people can do with it and what people can't do with it. So a good example is like, the Google logo looks great in color when it's on white, but not so much on like busy background. So you need to establish rules around when do you use it in color? When do you not use it in color? How do you use it when it's not in color? And all of that needs to be figured out by the designer and needs to be in a place where you can openly communicate those standards. The other thing that you can do is really think about what other communications can you predict in the future. So your logo it's not the final thing, but that logo is going to be put on banners at events, or it might be put on a YouTube video, or it might be used as a podcast icon on Spotify, for example. So to me, it's like really it's about building not only the standards and communications around what you do with that brand, but it's also, defining how it's used in other situations. That's also important when you're using brand strategy or creating language around your brand itself. It's important for you to, even discuss, okay, this is how we say it for this audience, but we need to change it for this particular audience. And all of that should be communicated through your standards. Now, typically my designers, that I work with, they don't need to go that far. That's my job. But, but it's just important to remember how, communication of where you want to take that brand. Just to summarize that, it's like create a place where people can find the standards that you've created. So something I like to do is create a presentation. Like Google has the Google presentations. You're able to like list out in slides exactly what your brand standards are. Now, we're able to do that internally because we're able to pass that around really easily, but you might actually create a standards deck that goes online. So I think I've seen your Behance actually, and the way you list out all of your projects and the way that you define, the case study for the project. Behance is also, maybe that would be a good way for you to also say, this is how you use these brand standards that I've created, this design that I've created, and this is how you're not supposed to use it.
Thank you so much, Matt, for explaining us in such great detail. So branding is all about storytelling and all. So how do you narrate a story of a brand to all of its people? And how do you decide on what mediums to use to convey that message?
That's a toughie. I'm not going to lie, because it's not just about brand strategy. That one's about marketing more than it is about a branding issue. So the first thing you'll want to do, like with any marketing brief, is define your key audience. Who are you actually trying to reach out to? You can say that a product is for everyone, but that's absolutely not true. And in most cases, it's not for everyone. That's what we found out with Bolo. It doesn't mean the same thing to everybody in every country. So we have to find a way to talk to a specific audience for a specific purpose, right? So once you define those people you really want to reach out to, you've got to figure out what they're actually looking for. Are they looking for your product or are they not looking for your product? And how do you define what your product needs to do for them? That makes sense. Now, when we're talking about branding and applying branding to that it's important to know first who your audience is. And then secondly, find out where they actually engage in communication. So sometimes they're on social, sometimes they're on YouTube, sometimes they're on, websites, sometimes they're listening to podcasts. It's important to know where that is. And then you can engage them in the place where they're at, right? In a meaningful way. So if I go back to, read along, that example that I gave earlier, it's really now launched in 180 countries. So we know that we really have to go after parents and educators. And what we decided is that there's only one thing that parents and educators both want, and that's just success for the kids that they support, right? They just want them to succeed. They also have to download the app to help the kids succeed. So that's really what we looked for is, where are they standing during the day? They're on commuter trains, they're on buses, they're using Wi-Fi at the stations. And it's important to remember that if they're there and they're using the Wi-Fi, that's a great marketing opportunity to talk to parents before they go to work. Same with teachers, they commute to their school. So that's where we chose to run marketing for, in India at least, for Read Along. And we ran 2 films, and we were very successful at not only locating our audience and speaking to them, but really showing off the prowess of what Read Along could do through that brand story that I told you guys earlier. So I think it's really about defining that key audience and then finding the places where they're at in a meaningful way so that you can connect them to your product.
Thank you, Matt. So on a concluding note, we would love you to recommend us 3 books and also 3 people who inspire you the most in this ecosystem.
Gotcha. So because I come from an advertising background, and I really do believe in the power of advertising and the power to communicate your brand to people, I would recommend one of my favorite books is called the Bill Bernbach book. And for those who don't know who that is, he's the father of modern advertising in America, at least. He ran an agency called Doyle, Dane and Bernbach, which is now known as DDB. It's a huge conglomeration today. But his philosophy was to tell the truth in advertising and to spark humor and wit and to believe that your audience is super smart. And so I love that because we're all human beings. And when you speak on a human level to another human being, you don't speak in these marketing terms. You speak in very personal ways. So I still strongly believe that his advertising is still relevant for today. And he actually did this amazing Volkswagen ad campaign right after, in the 60s, right after World War II ended, when Volkswagen wasn't doing so great. And he brought it back to life with his ads. I find that incredibly fascinating. Please read it. It's very hard to find, but I'm pretty sure you can locate a PDF or something online of it. The second book I wrote these down so that I remember, is called The Monocle Book of Japan. And I live in Tokyo right now. I'm absolutely fascinated with Japan. But the things that you see in the export of tourism for Japan is not like Japan at all. So what I love is that they kind of portray Japan in this very forward-thinking, but very traditional society, which is what it is. And they talk about, the restaurants and the craftsmen and the amazing businesses that you can find in Japan. And Monocle is just a proponent of, communicating those important businesses to the world. So it's a great book if you want to learn about in depth about this country, this amazing country. And then the last one is called Well Written and Read. So I know it's not a design book. Okay. It's about the Economist poster. So The Economist is a magazine in the United States. It's a red magazine. Their brand is really bold. It's a red brand with white type. It's always the same. And that's exactly how their posters look. They're always red with white type, very bold. So this one says E equals IQ squared. And this book just has typography, simplicity, but it's a great branding book because they just stay very, very consistent to their brand voice, who they are. And because it's a magazine, it's smart to do it in a narrative style that delights their audience. And since they have a very well-educated audience, they just go really, really high bar with their humor. Here's one that says, is there intelligent life on Mars? Our subscription department reports not. And it's on this big red and white poster. It's beautiful. Anyway, pick it up. It's very inspiring. And it just shows how consistent you can be with your singular message. That was 3, right?
Yes, 3. But if you want, you could tell more books as well. It's really awesome.
Okay, I have one more. So Paul Rand designed the IBM logo, the old one with the stripes.
Yes.
And what I love about his philosophy is that he designs for timelessness. So this book is called Paul Rand, Design, Form, and Chaos. I think it was published it was published in 1993. And it just kind of it's a great discussion on why you need to keep your design very simple, very communicative, and use what you know to create a timeless design appeal. So this is pretty neat book. I'll admit I haven't read the whole thing, but what I have read, it's great, and the pictures are wonderful. So if you want a little bit of academia, but you want a lot of inspiration, make this happen. Those are my books. 3 people that inspire me. Yes, of course. Actually, one of them's an agency. Hopefully that's okay. But the first one is Jessica Walsh. She's influential designer, used to work for Sagmeister and Walsh, but has since started her own company called & Walsh. And, what she's identified and differentiated for herself is that 0.1% of agencies, design agencies, are owned by women. So what she decided to do is open her own female-led design agency, and that's an amazing differentiation to make. Because her design is next level, and her books are next level. So more books if you want to put them on your list. The second group is Pentagram Design. I mean, they've been around forever. They're independently owned, and I just love all of it. So I go to Pentagram's site all the time for inspiration. And if you want branding inspiration, if you want to understand holistically how to build a brand and then how to execute that brand, it's a great website for you just to get lots and lots of case studies that allow you to kind of unpack how to do great design. And then last but not least, of course, Paul Rand. Paul Rand, IBM, come on. He did it all. He's amazing. And great inspiring designer. And it just is a constant reminder to me that you just want to keep your design simple and take away. Exactly. Don't add too much, right? Always remind yourself that less is more. So, yeah, I think he's just an amazing, inspiring designer.
Thank you so much, Matt, for your wonderful time and coming and joining our mission Spread Knowledge and helping us understand brand strategy so well. We are looking forward to host you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. What a neat program.